Let's all rise and pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's all rise and pledge the flag. I still don't sound any better. All right. Okay.
There we go. All right, we're good.
All right, evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular monthly meeting of the Smithfield Township Planning Commission. We have called the meeting to order. Ron or Lucas, you got the members who are present here, right? There are 4 of the 7 of us. We do have a quorum tonight. We said to pledge the flag. Let's take a look at the minutes, please. From last week. Yeah, let's do that. Anybody? Any discussion? I'll second it. Any discussion? Bob, Doug, anything? Okay. All right, all in favor that the November 10th, 2022 minutes are approved, say aye. Aye. Okay.
This is the first set done by Lucas, and he did a very good job.
He did. I'm telling you. You must have whipped him into shape, Ron.
He just did it on his own.
I appreciate picking up. I was 3 minutes late. Thank you for that.
Thank you, man. Thank you for that, right? All right. Do we have any comments on this evening's agenda? All right, let's move on here. The next thing. All right, let's dispose of 6A quickly. 6A should never have been on here. There's no request even for a tabling because last month we put it on until January. In my minutes.
Okay.
I mean, there's no point. It actually shouldn't have even been on here. So we'll pick up the Franklin Hill Manor Land Development Plan in January. It was in here, John. Yep.
Got it.
Okay. And we should all be good here. All right, we have 2 other things, or 3 other things, excuse me. We've got the review of the petition requesting for an amendment to the zoning ordinance, and we have the Westfield Commons sketch plan. Well, I said we may as well take them in order. Let's do the review of the Russell D. Scott petition to amend the zoning ordinance. And Ron?
Yeah.
All right, so this is set. Is there a public hearing already scheduled for this one?
There is a public hearing scheduled for next Wednesday.
For Wednesday. All right, so we're gonna take some action this evening. There we go.
Asked to be put on before you this evening.
Yeah.
To accommodate some of the attendance of individuals and anticipating that you would act on it. I've advertised for the public hearing to be next Wednesday before the board.
Okay, thanks. Ralph, this yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where would you like the presenters to be?
Go over there. Over there is fine. You're not, how much of a presentation are you planning?
We have a few people who want to present, and I'll make an opening if I may.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do the opening and then let's.
So I'm Ralph Maturgia, I'm a lawyer, and I'm representing the petitioners in this matter, who are comprised of Russ Scott, who is your community property owner, brother Craig Scott. They are the fee owners of what we refer to as the Mountain Manor property, which is a subject parcel of this petition. In addition, M Manor Holding Company, LLC, which is a limited liability company. I represent them. Michael Byrne is not in the room this evening, but I'm his lawyer. He's their company is one of the fee owners as well, possibly 25-acre parcel that adjoins the Mountain Manor piece. And Orchard B JK Company LLC, which is a limited liability company, principal of which is John Hammond, who's this evening, and we'll be hearing briefly from John at some point during the proceeding. And he is his company is an equitable owner of the Mountain Manor property. He has it under contract. The company has it under contract, and collectively they're proposing to rezone this parcel in the manner set forth in the petition. Now, the petition itself also includes three other parcels, two of which, they're small parcels, two of which are owned by Polly Scott, happens to be the daughter of Russell Scott. And I have a letter that we will introduce into the hearing next Wednesday where she was not necessarily joining the petition, but she consents to the zoning. She'd like to see that happen. There's a 0.42 acre parcel that's owned by Michelle Compton. She is not a party to the petition, but her land is impacted by the requested zoning petition. Now, the nature of the petition is very simple. It is a map change to the ordinance. It seeks to extend, if you will, the ED zone to property that is currently adjacent to the ED zone. So in essence, it would create increased depth of the zone in the area of the Mountain Manor property, both east and west of the Marshall Creek Road and east and west of the stream. The purpose of this rezoning is to change the land that is currently zoned R1 to ED, so that this land would then, additional land would be then available to develop for warehouse development. That's what Mr. Herman would like to do, his company would like to do, assuming that the town fathers and the planning commission are in agreement with the zone. So, without belaboring this, I will tell you that you're going to hear from three presenters this evening. Ted Herbert is with us this evening with Langen Engineering. Langen has extensive land use and development engineering experience. They have experience in your community. Specifically, Langen worked with the subject property when it was preliminarily approved as it currently exists for a PRD project of about 1,000+ homes and some mixed use. So in that context, they're very familiar with the subject property and its ability for development, availability for development. We have a number of exhibits that we're going to show this evening that can be summarized in terms of the zoning map. We have blow-ups of B1, B2, B3, which is petition exhibits that are in front of you. In addition to that, we have a blow-up where you can visualize the Mountain Manor PRD that was approved in 2009, more or less to see what this property preliminarily approved for in 2009 as an alternative to what we're proposing in terms of subsequent development. And then we prepared a concept plan for a warehouse fulfillment center on the subject property on the assumption that it would be in fact rezoned. And with respect to that concept plan, I understand it's not a land development plan, we're not there yet, but it will show what fits on the property, how property generally could be accessed, and so forth. In addition to Mr. Herbert, you'll hear from Russ Scott, the owner of the property, as to the history of the property, how it was approved for the PRD, and what the fiscal impacts are with respect to what is being proposed for this property. Additionally, there's an aspect to this, and we will point out that a portion of the Mountain Manor property that is under contract, but proposed to be donated to the township, about 100 acres. It is east of Marshall Creek Road, east of the stream. And Mr. Scott will tell you the background and why he made that a condition, if you will, of his agreement with the purchaser of the property, Mr. Herman. And Mr. Herman will address the board, if you will, give some background as to his development experience, which is extensive, and also address to you the fiscal impacts and economic impacts of the property as well, and why we believe in totality the community will benefit from this rezoning. So with that introduction, we'd like to
Okay.
bring
One
forward.
question before we start.
Yes.
When was this property zoned R1?
That I can't tell you.
At its inception, so in the mid 1970s. Okay, so it's always been R1. Okay.
With the resort umbrella, that's the way it was.
Mhm. So your proposal is to take it from an R1 all the way to our broadest economic development business one. That's what you're asking for this evening.
Correct.
Okay.
Then the ED zone, which essentially covers your Route 209 corridor. Portion of that.
Okay.
Robert?
That is on the commission.
Lieutenant Herbert Langen. First map. First exhibit is exhibit D1. This is the township zoning map. And on this map, we have identified in a red crosshatch subject properties that we're looking to rezone from R1 to the economic development zone. And as you can see, the business Route 209 is currently zoned predominantly B zone. So we'd be looking to extend that on the north side of business to allow for the subject property. Second plan that I have, as Ralph mentioned, this is the previously approved PRD plan. Can everybody see?
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Herbert.
There's another one over there. Oh, it's yours.
Yeah, that's that's Nate's. Yeah, but back up. All right. Thanks, Nate.
If you can, Mr. Herbert, position the map such that it's there in the corner of the audience and see what you're talking about.
Yep. Yes, checking, move on here. Very good.
Mhm.
So the audience, but the first one was just to be.
Yes. New job. This is the township zoning map, and identified here, the properties that we're looking to rezone from R1 to the zone. And we noted, business 209 runs along here, and nominally zone right now. And we'll be looking to extend. To the north side, this 209 further. This is. And the Mountain Manor site had a preliminary approval for a PRD, which featured 1,000 residential units, along with some mixture of some retail on the frontage on 209. This plan was part of what was previously approved.
Oh, yeah.
What year was this period?
This is 2000. This is from 2009. This isn't even, I don't even know why it's up here because this has nothing to do with what we're here for. So,
The purpose of this exhibit is to show you what could be built on this property in an alternative.
all right, but it hasn't been. So let's move on. Mhm.
Also provided was exhibit B2 and B3, which identify the lots that are being rezoned. These are identified as crosshatch areas. This is the property, portion of the property that's located to the east of Marshall Creek Road. And then part of this lot extends across onto the west side. And that's what's represented on exhibit B3. Is the remaining areas. That would be the east side. On the east side.
Yeah.
Marshall Creek Road. And then as part of the development, the developer would be looking to dedicate plans to the east. That would be for the township.
That's 100 acres.
Yeah, the lands.
That would be everything east of the stream. Yes. Owned by,
100 plus or minus acres east of the stream.
Let me just clarify something for you. Where you see the upper head, piece of red line, that's a parking area, and the waterfall is north of that. And would be right here. This would be part of the gift here. This would not, and all of this would be. But this is the parking lot is we think necessary for your future in the waterfall. And this is also included, which then total comes out to 100 plus or minus.
But we're not looking at that on our little sheet here.
That's pretty here.
No, I see it, but it's not all on there.
Yeah, because we don't have a B3 attached, but that's all right.
Okay.
That's basically what B3 is.
We get it. Yeah, over here.
The last plan is the conceptual site plan that was developed for the site to evaluate the yield or fit within the property. And what we have here is about 1 million square foot warehouse facility, which provides loading docks and loading trailer parking spaces on both the north side and the south side. And then employee parking on the west and east side of the.
Now we have a conceptual access, which is not a development plan.
Mhm.
It's a concept plan. No sense of getting to a development plan unless we have it.
Well, where are these trucks gonna come and go from?
So I think that can be explained, or
Right.
the access is off about 209.
Off of 209, we're showing high volume drive. Off of 209, which we facilitate truck access, and then additional access for employees.
Oh, there's no shape.
I can do that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Purpose of perspective, the warehouse is sitting on about 147 acres. Give you an idea of buffer, give you an idea
Mhm.
of footprint.
Okay.
So if there are questions of Mr. Herbert, of course, he's not leaving, but if you have any questions you want to pick up now, if not, Mr. Murray would like to make an introduction at this point.
Okay.
Russell Scott.
I just got a quick question if I may, sorry. The wetland portion, the parcel ID 16.6.1.32, just north of the entire.
That's pond.
It's that one. There's a pond in there.
Yeah.
Let me explain that. That is I'll use the term catch basin, built years ago by the previous property owner. That water level is 8 foot lower than the high quality cold water fishery runs the Marshall Creek. Okay, understand that nothing on the west side of Creek Road affects the high quality stream. Very unique. And that particular area, even when the LTS was looking to put in these 1,000 homes, is gonna be his stormwater drainage area.
Right.
Now, what happens to that water? It goes through the ground all the way to the Sambo Creek, which is where we have our sewer plant, and all the way into the Broadheads through East Rowley.
Mhm.
That water there does not ever get mixed up with the water in the Marshall Creek. It's a rarity, but there's no correlation whatsoever. The elevation, as I indicated, is about an 8 foot difference.
That is part of I just see this massive line, but that is part of the parcel.
That is a parcel that's owned by M Manor. It's under contract with Orchard. It will be acquired. It's separate from the Scott parcel.
Right.
But it's proposed for ED zone as well.
In the petition for ED.
Yes,
Okay.
and the line for that, the zoning line, this parcel here is Frankfurt Laverne parcel. The zoning line runs here. The proposed zoning line, I should say.
Mhm.
It's shown on the.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Hi, how's everybody today? If you don't know, my name is Albert Murray Jr., AKA Sonny, all right? And I am an attorney, and I've known Ralph, as a matter of fact, in 1974. My family, as you know, used to own the Hillside Inn in East Stroudsburg, and we did that. We bought that in 1953 and opened it officially in 1955 with my mom and dad, Odetta and Albert Murray. And I became a lawyer here in the Poconos. We were back and forth from Brooklyn to Georgia. But I became a lawyer here in 1974 with the Harry Lee firm. That's where Ralph and I got to know each other. But what's more important than all of that, well, almost as more important, I've been living in Marshall's Creek down the Creek Road, in a log cabin, but it's in Middle Smithfield. I've been living in a log cabin there for 43 years. And my big brothers and the people that loved us at Hillside and helped us when nobody would was right here. Russ Scott and Ted Scott. And remember the Mountain Manor property and his family, we were best friends with. They were on Mountain Manor since 1932. And Russ, as my older brother, my father listened to him and wouldn't listen to me about anything, because when Russ would speak up, then my father put the first golf course on Hillside and all that, and it was always the Scots who helped us. The reason why I represent them now is because we are family, and because I support them in everything that they do. Yet, we always talk about the good and bad of everything also. We love this county. As I said, I've been here since I was 4 years old. So I'm proud to represent Russ in this transaction with Mr. Herman, and I've gone over the transaction. I'm working with Ralph. So what Russ is going to do now is explain to you exactly, clarify what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why he's selling Mountain Manor, which I believe is one of the most famous properties in the book. And what I think is a public-private partnership he's proposing. I think it's great for Smithfield Township, but also for Monroe County. And I think he's the best one, him and Craig are the best ones, especially for us to explain to you exactly why he's doing this deal, why he wants this to happen. Thank you. Okay, get it up there. I'm sorry, we're family.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. And certainly want to thank you all for your volunteerism. Keep the wheels of government turning. Without you, things aren't the same. So again, good to see you all here tonight. Tonight, I'm going to be discussing choices and rateables and how it affects the quality of our life here in the township. So you have an idea, starting in 2023, zoning will have been 50 years experience in Smithfield Township. And through the years, there's been a great deal of pros and cons related to it. And I should tell you that I was very honored to know all of the participants on the original planning commission who are no longer with us. And it was an interesting time for this township back then. In 1973, commercial zoning and industrial zoning scared the daylights out of people. They had no idea what it was, where we were going, how it worked.
I'll use these.
And it was so much that the planning commission chose Airport Road for its industrial use. The reason that happened and the function of that was their assumption was that no one would build industrial properties there. They didn't want the planning commission. And however, the why of it is that we had in those days house trailers, multiple house trailers on Airport Road. You may not remember that. And the term at that time was called shantytown. And thank God Bygone came along and has now developed that to a very viable and positive tax base for this community. The second one that was always brought up is the fear of a commercial expansion. And that commercial expansion was the second location that was known to us as the Long Woods. Today, it's known to you as the property between Craig's Meadows Road and Marshall's Creek Road, which is nothing but a big rock. And today we are, because they didn't want spot zoning, that was a big deal in those days. They turned around and made that whole property commercial. Now, if you look at that, the only thing you could put in there was maybe some houses, but it was zoned commercial, and the zoning and the planning commission at that time didn't really want commercial. They weren't understanding it. So today we have a excavation happening, not a quarry. And the function is, if you look at it, is at the road level. The definition is not a quarry, it's an excavation. The function of the excavation is to create the commercial area. The argument always was that whoever went in there would have to blast their way in. And it's been happening now for years, as you've been seeing it. That's the whole function of what happened way back in '73 with the zoning as it moved forward. So I'll give you a little bit of that. And so I would like to move on a little bit and talk about the Scott family, after 75 years and 3 generations, developed a resort hotel, 54 holes of golf, and things began to change in 1990. And the major change was property tax millage. At that time was 38 mills in 1990. Today, that millage is 187 mills. That very number is what put the golden goose out of business. And I mean by the golden goose, the resorts. And I will name several of them for you. The property tax was the #1 reason the resort industry became closed their doors. It was Mountain Manor, Mountain Lake, Hillside Inn, Village Inn, Water Gap Country Club, Echo Lake Resort, Hammerman, Oakmont, Fernwood, many other small ones. All of us had been contributing to the tax base for the school districts. And that's all been gone because we just couldn't sustain the capitalization needed to get there. So that brings me to Mr. Herman and the arrangement. He came and talked to Craig and I, and he wanted to buy the property. He only wanted the section where he has his warehouse. We refused. We said, no, you have to buy it all or nothing. Mr. Herman then turned to us and said that he would donate the 100 acres to the township at a value of $2 million. So I will talk a little bit about that. And I have a write-up I'll share with you as an additional. That property has about a half a mile of the Marshall's Creek running through it, which is a high-quality cold water fishery. It adjoins your waterfall on the north, your waterfall being the township waterfall of Marshall's Falls. And you would have access off of Route 402. It has 2 bridges, park bridges and pedestrian bridges on it that are meet the 100-year flood. It's concrete and steel. There's about 6,000 feet of 8-foot asphalt path for walking, whatever travel you want to do, that kind of thing. Today, with an NPDES permits required for stormwater, you couldn't build on this property a great deal. However, 3/4 of the property has been already impacted, cleared, filled, graded, seeded, mowed, drained. All of that has been done and is in place. Therefore, when the township decided that they wanted it, They can have their athletic fields for the next 100 years. They can come in and have their walking paths. The thing is kind of ready to go without all the requirements that are needed for a normal process of development. So that's a very interesting concept. Plus, the biggest thing is it's going to allow you to park and have access to the Marshall Falls, which right now is a big problem because basically it's closed. There's nowhere to park, and it's a beautiful waterfall. If you haven't seen it, you need to get there. It's worth your time. Now let's talk about the consideration of the expansion of the ED zone. The proposed warehouse. What's interesting about this is that this warehouse will produce $3 million of property tax annually. And Mr. Herman has some other details if you want to break down between township, county, and state. I'm using ballpark figures here just so you know. And the match to that $3 million would require 800 homes to be built to match the income of the 3 million. However, if you use the statistics we have today, there would be 2.5 children per house at $16,000 a child, which is a negative $32 million annually to you and I, the taxpayer, to help carry this load. Plus, the ratio of teacher to student, in East Stroudsburg School District is 14-1. In order to sustain that ratio, we would have to hire another 70 school teachers at a value about a year, about $4.2 million ballpark, depending on their 68,000 startup, whatever the number is. Also, the budget for East Stroudsburg School District this year coming, 2023, is $180 million. They also this year are short $6 million. So if we do the math, you and I are due for a heck of a tax raise if we can't find a way to help sustain this offset these costs. This is a possibility, something to think about as you go forward. In conclusion, and I'll be glad to take all answers, and I have a handout I'd like to give the chairman, make copies for you related to the details of the gift. It's interesting to me, and it's always been offensive to me, that the federal government, state government, county government, or municipal government can turn around and acquire this property from me, and with an NPDS permit, with an HOP permit, hook up to the sewer and water, can build any damn building they want at any size, anywhere, doesn't matter. Zoning does not apply. But here we are, as residents, have to follow all the zoning laws and rules, which is fine. That's what the government wants. But it's always offensive to me that the government itself does not apply to its own. Just another comment. So that would be all. I take any questions. I have a handout here, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, hand it up.
Here, Sonny.
Okay,
Help me out.
thank you, Bill.
Let them hand it out.
I got you.
Any questions, Joe?
No, actually, everybody that's on this board did it when we did the current ED zone and made it all. We went through exhaustively all of these considerations
Okay,
when we put our existing ED zone in place.
okay,
So, thank you.
thank you.
That's all right. We'll
That's
get
all right, yeah, we'll get them. Yeah, we'll get it.
Right, right.
We'll get it. Okay. Next.
Hello, I'm John Herman. I'm the prospective developer of the site. I'm from Reading. Was a member of Porter's Lake at one time, so I know the area fairly well. But I'm a lawyer by background. I've been in the real estate and real estate development business for the last 38 years. I own the largest Century 21 office in the Northeast, Century 21 Gold. I own a commercial brokerage company, NAI Keystone. We manage about what, 5 million square feet? 5 million square feet of office space and commercial warehouse space, as well as do brokerage. And I, as a developer, have developed office buildings, industrial, and residential. I don't do retail, but I've been doing that for 30-some years. I've done about 6 million square feet of warehousing.
What's the name of your company?
Well, I do them on different, it depends on the development company. This one is Orchard BJK Company, Billy, Jake, and Kate, my kids. That's
That's a LLC.
an LLC. Anyway, this property is a perfect property for industrial development. Has access to Interstate 80. The ground itself is flat. There is a extreme market demand for that type of product. And it brings significant economic benefits to your community. I have a study here, which I'll give you, that was just done in 2022. U.S. Chamber of Commerce study of impact of the community economic impact of new distribution centers. Had 30 different communities that they looked at. They looked at communities anywhere from 100,000 people to 20 million people. So we locally here fit into that. And I'll let you read it. I'll give it to you. You can read it, but the statistics are amazing. The average wage for when a distribution center comes into the community goes up between $3,000 and $4,000 a year, every year for 20 years. For every job created within the warehouse itself, there's another 0.7 jobs created within the community. So the benefit for here, increasing personal wealth or personal income as well as wages, is significant. Russ talked about the benefit of the taxes. Obviously, when you do a residential development of 800 homes, if each home was worth $200,000, that's 160 million worth of construction. The warehouse itself will be about 150 million. So they're pretty much the same when you look at values and what they would generate in taxes. So,
So, Mr. Herman, you heard me say earlier, we all did this when we went through this with our economic development zone, when we made our zoning changes in the last 5 or 6 years. And when I say it was exhaustive, I mean it was an exhaustive process. And we came up with areas for the for the ED zone that are in red here on this particular exhibit.
Okay.
All right. And so what you're trying to tell us as the planning commission is that there isn't a property anywhere within our existing red ones here that will accommodate what you want to do. Okay. That's my question. That's enough of an answer. Thank you. Anybody
the
else?
only thing I can say is that this property is perfect for us.
Okay.
For the warehouse needs.
Okay.
Anyone have any questions for me?
Yeah. Sorry. Anybody else? Go ahead. One of the things we've been worried about these warehouses, these distribution centers, is in and out traffic. Obviously, you've got a little intersection of Marshalls, what we call the Marshalls Creek intersection, which is really 209, 209. Seven Bridges Road meets
Correct.
Milford Road, right there in Marshalls Creek, and not far from where your exit of this truck traffic is going to propose to be.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
what's the way you're
Yeah.
thinking of it. And what scares me about this is that now suddenly we're going to have a volume of truck traffic in and out, some type of intersection there, some type of pull off and intersection. And not only that, but clogging up, not clogging up, but creating more traffic at the light at the business 209 and Franklin Hill Road.
Where it
Sorry.
comes down past
Seven Bridges.
the restaurant. The name of the restaurant?
Alaska Pete's.
Yeah, where it comes down past
Yeah,
the
when it
last.
goes past Alaska Pizza and meets the 209, meets
Correct.
Business 209 or Milford Road. So we
Yeah.
call them Seven Bridges Road and Milford Road, where the two meet.
Right.
There's suddenly gonna be a lot more traffic there and big traffic, big trucks. So there's going to have to be investment in that to create that, to facilitate that.
Right. Okay. I'm not
And,
interrupting.
and we're also going to be dealing with trucks rolling up towards 80, because you mentioned Route 80 is close by.
Yeah, that'll be the major access.
Right, so you got big trucks running up to the roundabout, the traffic circle on Seven Bridges, and then further on up Seven Bridges, and then meeting the traffic that's going to inevitably be at the Gateway shopping center / residential compound. The new thing, the new facility that's being built by Legend Properties up there.
Yeah.
You know, right near Route 80.
Yeah.
So there's all this, you know, is suddenly going to be laid on, not to mention, by the way, the new Vigon warehouse facility, which is also going to be in and out. And those trucks are probably going to take that same route. So, excuse me?
I wish they so. I think they go the other way.
You think they'll go the other way, 447?
No,
Yeah,
I think five, well, it doesn't matter. I think five would go the other two, the other direction.
okay, maybe. In any case, they're all going to meet at, you know, at some point down at Route 80. Both ways. So my question is, this is a terrific load. Obviously, you haven't had PennDOT do any studies of traffic loading or any of that?
No, and if I can answer it, I'm not interrupting.
Yeah,
everyone.
I just dropped a whole load of stuff on the table and I
And that's fine. And
encourage you to sort
obviously,
through it.
there's no question that there will be trucks on the road and there will be an impact of that. It's inevitable by the nature of what the use is.
Right.
My understanding, and I don't know if Ted knows, he might be able to talk more about it. When the roundabout was designed, it was designed taking into consideration not necessarily the truck traffic, but the traffic from the PRD when that was designed, which would have been a minimum of 1,800 more cars. on the road.
Passenger cars. Yeah,
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that's still a lot of traffic. That still backs up. So it was designed to handle a lot more traffic than what it's currently being designed for. And my understanding also is that I don't know if it's the township in conjunction with the state has committed to doing improvements on 209 from 80 up on the synchronization of the lights. So there will be less handle the impact to a better degree. Of course, we haven't gotten that far in our study of the site. If PennDOT wouldn't approve it, then we couldn't go, if we couldn't
Right.
get a highway occupancy permit, we couldn't.
so we're just spitballing here.
Yeah, yeah.
So the next question really, and what Scott was pointing to earlier, is there not another space closer to Route 80 that's more suitable for in and out truck traffic? I mean, when we go down Route 33 to Allentown, Easton, Bethlehem,
Right,
down Route 33, there's on the left and the right, both sides,
absolutely.
enormous warehouses.
Yeah, 78 Lehigh Valley is the
It's just,
epicenter of
there must be 10 or 12 million square feet
Right.
down there,
I'm
all
doing-
aggregate.
I'm doing 1 million in pool ball right now. I've done 400. I have a 300 that has
So
preliminary approval.
you know what we're talking about. These are very
That's
large
what I do. Yeah.
and they're close to 33. I don't see that there's a lot of truck traffic choking up neighborhoods or getting, long drives to Route 33, where then they eventually go down to 22 or 78 or whatever.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying? I mean, is there not anything in these townships either side of Route 80 that are closer that?
No, not that I
And
think
that
that
would-
find that zone or from a development standpoint would be suitable for what
Right.
I'm doing.
Right,
I can't say that there aren't other properties that might be available. There very well could be, but I'm obviously familiar with the Scott property, and I think that's a
right.
perfect property, and I'm probably doing 3 million square feet around the area now. So.
I'm sorry, you're.
Oh,
doing-
not just here. I'm in different areas. I'm developing about 3 million square feet right now. But no question, trucks, there will be trucks on the road and they will have an impact.
Right.
And the question whether, it's a balancing act, whether that's something that's worth having the increased ratables, increased job, increased in
Right.
income. That's a decision you have. to
How many
make.
jobs are we looking at here at this warehouse?
Probably a minimum of 500 and could be, depending on the nature of the tenant that goes in there, could be 1,500, but most likely it's 500.
And no, at this point, Russ, I'm asking anyone, I'm throwing this up to the group. At this point, does anyone have any idea who the tenant or what type
No.
of tenant it might be?
No.
Amazon,
It could be an Amazon type user
Walmart.
or Walmart or a combination of some of these warehouses now have 20 or 30 different
right,
vendors that go in because everything is based on expediency and being closer to the market so
Right.
that there's economies of scale.
right.
That's what's behind the warehouse business. I guess 13% of all retail business is now done online. That's just growing. So
Right, yeah, sure.
My only question is about the buffer. I'm looking at the Google Maps and trying to see where the actual homes are in the R1.
homes
Existing residences,
on
not on the parcel, on adjacent
on Creek
parcel,
Road.
especially this, basically it's all,
Just uphill from them, it's on there.
it's on the north side, right?
Mhm.
Where the biggest
Yes.
concern would be. I don't know if we have at some point.
That's where it is.
Right.
Yeah, those up there. I'm trying to see those on the map, but is that?
Yeah, it's up at the top. Yeah, it's all the ones that used to overlook the golf course. It's all in there. No,
Okay.
upper left there. Yep.
Okay, yeah. Is that Pine Ridge Road?
It's basically go up to,
It goes
yeah,
off
Craig's Meadow Road, the intersection and turns right.
There, higher up.
Okay, so that's must be these. Can't really see
Mhm.
the trees. Into the map. Taylor Drive and stuff.
So their neighbor would now be a 1 million square foot warehouse.
Just for clarification.
Yeah.
To the southwest of the warehouse, that's all from there to Business 209, it's all commercial.
Right,
Yes.
There are non-conforming residents in there,
yeah,
but have been in
yeah,
there since the inception of the
Mhm.
zone.
right. for a
So
long
you're
time.
aware of the logistics.
Yes.
It's ED actually right now.
It is. They're just,
Yeah.
they just happen to be non-conforming in it. Yeah, that's all.
But it was.
That's
commercial
part of
before
what we,
then.
it's what we put in the ED zone. Okay,
Okay,
This project is proposing the ED being expanded a little bit north. From my perspective, I'm 100% behind the value of, as much as I don't love them, the value of them in a community for our biggest issue, which we all will talk about, is in property tax and how important that is. I think the question is around, from my side, is around the neighbors.
Mhm.
And when you convert what is presently residential and people bought, we were just talking about
Yeah.
the industrial zone and up at the airport where there's neighbors complaining and saying, well, you bought right next to an industrial zone. Sort of out of luck there. This is a little bit different where someone has bought next to a residential zone without an expectation that there would be massive industry there. But I also see that it does look like a large buffer. I just don't know. Right now, that looks like, but that's fairways right now, correct? Or grown over fairways.
They're filling in, yeah.
And I do think that's also the question that was raised by the Monroe County Planning
Yes.
Commission. Seems to be the main point is, which I assume you guys have seen, the August 24th.
no.
Really?
What was that?
It's from the Monroe County Planning. August 24th letter from Monroe County Planning Commission.
You have it in your
That's
packet?
surprising. Yeah,
The commission should be aware that
Mhm.
the township has sent the most
Yeah.
revised zoning petition to the Monroe County Planning Commission for a review, because
Yeah, that was the one.
This is from the original
a
one.
little different.
Oh, we have
than
seen
what
it.
was
Yeah.
proposed. So,
Yeah, that was the one before.
Yeah, so this was the letter from August 24.
Yeah.
We're not favorable, probably.
You don't have,
You don't have.
And the reason why we can't share this?
And surely within
Have this copy.
the land development process, we would, I assume, be required to put substantial buffer that would check those homes.
how tall is the building gonna be?
45 feet,
Metal?
no, tilt up concrete.
May I interrupt for one moment? You should not be focusing on what is going to go in here.
Right.
Because anything in the ED zone can go in here, which is maybe 50 or 60 different types of projects.
Right.
You need to focus on whether or not it makes sense to change the zoning for this area from residential to ED, irrespective of what the project may be. But don't get hung up on the project, get hung up on what you're here for, which is to make a recommendation as to whether this zone should be changed.
So, which leads me to a question I was gonna ask Russ. Why would it be, or would it be possible to revitalize the golf course? And before you say, no, that's ridiculous, what do you think about that? Place to play the course.
Statistically, in the 1990s, the highest growth in golf nationally
Mhm.
was 15% female.
Mhm,
Since then, because both spouses are working
mhm,
and everything involved with raising a family today, people don't have the 4 or 5 hours today. Golf is at a decline, except for the high-end clubs.
mhm.
We were a community club. We worked on volume customers. We did the second most amount of golf rounds in the entire state of Pennsylvania annually. And with that, our draw was Connecticut, New York,
Yeah, I know.
Philadelphia, New Jersey. And things began to diminish. And I brought it up in my comments about 1990. And then once the taxes hit us, we couldn't stay. I'll give you another one. We fought this for years, and it was my personal issue, and Judge Miller and I went round on this one. The county is our taxing agency. The township treated us as a residential use permit, right? However, the county treated us as commercial, but I couldn't get a commercial permit. The rateable's 4 times, every square foot of ground, every golf course hole, every building, including the villas we had built and rented, we were paying 4 times the rateable than anybody else was. I couldn't get the county to even give me a break on it. And then finally and of course, in this type of business, you're capitalizing your business to bring in new customers.
Yeah,
We were into 4 generations of people, and we just couldn't develop and go from there. And so it just became a time when it was just, you're paddling upstream.
did you ever try to get to get the state interested or involved?
I didn't have the wherewithal, that I don't know where to go from there. I personally have problems like when a municipality or a state gets involved with a golf course or ice rink. I think that hurts the economics of the public, but that's just me, that kind of thing. I also want to mention one more thing while we're spitballing here. You brought up the road issues and traffic. One of the things that bugs the heck out of me, the Park Service, which we're all familiar with, 27 miles along the river, advertises that they have 10 million visitors a year come through here. We're the gateway. They don't do one thing to help us with our roads and design. And Jim DePetris down here, you guys have approved, he's expanded that highway out to the complete width it can right-of-way wise. And on the economic authority side, we funded intermodal transportation money and other things like that to try and help this road for this community. I've made the motions and made the support of that every time. And it's just, we can't get any more. We would love to have more right-of-way. And of course, the acquisition side of it is, it just costs too darn much money. Just be aware of, there's been an effort.
Mhm.
And we're also, I'm involved helping JD Ekman working on the interstate. This section of interstate runs through us, is the oldest section of interstate in the country. And we are now, it was designed for 13,000 trips a day. We're exceeding 75,000 trips a day. And right now with the plans, we're gonna need probably
$5 billion, I don't know, something of that nature to get between here and Canonsville to get the bypass. And it's just the community. Here we sit, an hour and a half drive, 55 million people. And that's never gonna change. The dynamic of that is unique to this area. And so the people are coming because of the reason you like it here, the reason I like it here. And all we're trying to do is make it work. So that's just spitball.
Any other questions for me?
Anything, Bob? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
I don't want to, can I ask a question for council?
Yeah, sure.
On, to your point,
you want these, studies?
I'll take one.
Just it's done in 2022.
Yeah, but sure, absolutely.
If this was rezoned ED,
Mhm.
and
With some of the background.
we needed, or someone wanted to build, they'd have to come up with a, could obviously have to be putting together a proposal. I guess I'm thinking about buffers. The ED doesn't necessarily, this is maybe a question for John, actually. ED doesn't necessarily specify increase for us right now in the ED, the ordinance does not necessarily specify in the ED for increased buffers for larger buildings.
No, and I don't have the buffer requirements memorized, but there's no sliding scale in our ordinance that I'm aware of.
Now, there may be buffer requirements.
I know that
In
there are
the
buffers.
Saldo, riparian buffers, regular buffers, et cetera, but until we would know what the project would be, it would be difficult to say that those buffers, will apply.
Right.
But the zoning ordinance itself for the ED, I agree with John, as far as I can remember, doesn't have any buffering requirement.
It's all in Saldo.
What is the approximate distance from the residences to the proposed site?
From business 209 into the building.
Above it.
Above it? Greg, you want to throw a number?
Yeah, rough. I don't know.
Those fairways, Bob, look at the fairways. It says 8 yellow and blue. Those fairways are an average of 60 yards wide. So just do the math on those three, and that's those residents are part of the people who are involved in the ED zone. They're not residents, they're rentals. Okay? And there's actually one resident, I should be honest with you. But other than that, that just happened. That was the old Hood. Remember John Hood worked over at
Over 500 feet, over 500 feet.
Is that where Charlie Wagner lives?
yes, right, actually right next to that property he was. That's right,
Okay,
right there.
Thank you.
And just for your purposes, Bob, above that, Craig and I still own another 50 acres that adjoins Pine Ridge, which was brought up here, which is also residential use. But it doesn't help his project. It would be for more residential or something, as views, but it doesn't have the level of CD.
Thank you.
One more question, I think I already answered, but check. You can't change, the zones between a single property, right? It has to follow property lines.
You tell me what you're thinking, and then I'll be able to maybe have.
No, I'm just curious about, I mean,
Give me an
it looks like a big portion of that in this example, and if this was something that I'm not necessarily saying planning commission members want it, but if supervisors wanted it, thought this was the right thing for the community. There looks like there is a large buffer being planned between that and residential. And if there was a amicable view of a subdivision down the line with, for instance, economic development zone cutting through there and not including some of those areas further between the residential and the big building.
I mean, in theory, I suppose you could cut a lot in half with a
I'm not suggesting.
zoning district, but
It's
it
actually
generally
45
doesn't,
million cubic feet.
it doesn't make good policy, because then we're not sure how it's gonna be taxed, who's gonna do what, et
It
cetera.
would probably, in that such a situation, would make more sense to subdivide.
Yeah, then if you subdivide a 10-acre lot to 5, then you can say, okay, this 5 will be ED and this 5 will remain residential. It makes it easier that way out.
Okay, just curious.
Thinking in the assembly building down.
I was saying,
John is looking at a book here, so we have to make sure.
Well, what I'm wondering, we have a lot of our uses in the township require conditional use. And if this were to be subject to that,
On ED zones, though, a lot of those conditions.
No, we
Eliminate
do that on purpose, actually.
yeah, I know, because you could put a condition of a buffer on.
Yeah, we did the ED zone on purpose, though.
Now, you could always condition an approval with a buffer, provided the applicant agrees. Obviously, as long as the applicant agrees, you can.
can't put a condition on the zone.
No,
No, we're talking about a plan.
A plan that can't
Because
be-
in all of these, if it's changed to ED, they're gonna have to come in with the land development.
Well, let's take
He does have a lot of by right uses, which is exactly what you said.
Yes.
Potential issue. I'm just saying, even if everyone was in favor of this, which I'm sure there's many that are not, but there's still the risk that it could be something else entirely.
I don't recall that a warehouse is a by right use in the ED zone.
Yes, it is.
It is.
It is. Yes, now there's a curative amendment that has been noticed and resolved by the township to cure the definition of a warehouse.
Mm.
So that cure is now out there as a municipal curative amendment. But the ED zone does say warehouse.
anything else, Ralph?
Right. That concludes our
Okay.
presentation. We are looking forward to the commission, if they choose, to make a recommendation
Mhm.
to the board of supervisors, as we will be in public hearing before the supervisors next Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah.
And of course, the public will have another opportunity to ask questions and hear the presentation before the supervisors
Okay.
make a legislative decision.
All right. So our job is to make a recommendation in one way or the other on this.
Correct, and I think you
Okay.
should take any public comment before you.
I was just gonna ask you, I thought we should do that first. All right, members of the public here, before we make any motions or any further deliberation, do we have anybody here that would like to make any statement on this? Yes, sir, please stand up. Give us your name, please, and by all means.
Steve Kemper, and I own 3 parcels that are on Pine Ridge Road. I'm just concerned, I'm trying to see on the map, I can't see it from here. Can you explain to me? Pine Ridge is not on it. So how far away is Pine Ridge?
Right up to the upper left. Mm-mm. It's small, but it's further up. It's above your left, it's above your hashed line, but further up than is depicted on your other. It's up in there.
Show me on this.
I mean, my concern.
Yeah, what's your concern?
Is I own 3 parcels of land. I moved up here to be in the country. If I'm gonna be, the people on Pine Ridge Road are gonna be staring at this massive warehouse. And what it's gonna do to our property values and what the traffic's gonna be like on Craigslist Road, which is the main thoroughfare getting back into that residential neighborhood. May I ask you, do you live next to Franklin, Joe Riccaboni at all? I live across the street, okay. And I also have a lot. You know where on the golf course. Okay. Where Joe's home is and your home is, there's a fairway in front of you. That's a 50-acre parcel in there that we own. Then there's the parcels that the Burns gentleman, Drew and Burns own. And if you notice the land is plateaued, the elevation from up at Frank's all the way down to where this is a 200-foot elevation. And because it's plateaued and wooded parcels in between, you will not be able to see the roof even of this. All the way down. Can you see the church from your place at this point? Frank Meadows Church? No, I don't think so. See, that would be opposite this. So if you just trying to be honest with you, I don't think you'll see it, no. And another little thing about it's interesting, let's say we put 1,000 houses in there, just for argument.
Those houses, that traffic will then spill onto Great Meadows Road and Creek Road, along with Business 209. This case, the HOP would only come off of Business 209. You have to have safety roads for emergency off of those roads, but it would not be functionally used or impact the neighborhood on Craig Meadows Road where you traffic. Just so you know, if that happens. And chances are, PennDOT's gonna require him to put a street light at the end of Craig Meadows Road and Business 209, which you may or may not like a candle shop. PennDOT has a tendency to want to extort money from a developer, and that's something that they probably would.
So probably two more lines.
For the warehouse entrance, the main truck traffic, that's gonna be coming directly off 209.
Required by PennDOT. And he could show you on the map where there's two
By the
alternatives.
Christmas
And
shop.
the other thing that's interesting for you, there's an 11-acre commercial property between Business 209 and where this property is, we don't own. And that property would either be owned by this gentleman and expand commercial area, or the owner will keep it and make an agreement with him, to use his right of way in so that he can develop his 11 acres. Imagine if you own 11 acres and PennDOT wants $3 million to put a turn lane in and a light, you can't afford it. Nobody can come into your property. So this particular individual, Paul Shupton is his name, he was very much interested in trying to develop his commercial area, which is another tax base that we're talking about, just so you know the linkage here, how it all kind of fits, plus or minus, however you see it.
Ted, would you show, Mr. Kemper where the access road is? Currently, we're showing an access road right here.
No business 209, so he knows where it is.
Business 29 running on.
Where the Pocono pets and stuff is, I think.
Yeah, the old, because we're showing access here. He's talking about.
Oh, the pet
Show
store.
property here.
Let me just say, as a developer, both PennDOT will require, and as a commercial issue, no tenants will want to drive their trucks up either Marshall Street Road or Creek Road. So I couldn't develop and sell that site or develop that site if truck traffic were maybe coming in anywhere off it other than 209. That doesn't mean that some of the employees might come off some of those roads, but all major truck traffic will come off of 209 with emergency access on those other roads, in case of fire or something like that. But no truck traffic will impact on your road, other than 209.
Thank you.
Everything's driven by commercial demand. So I could, I could build 10 little warehouses there, but there isn't a demand for that. So this is what the demand in the marketplace.
Anybody else from the public wish to say? All right. Any members of the board wish to make any statements or comments or motions? Hearing none, I make a motion that we deny this request for a zoning change. Any seconds?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Bob and Michael? Two nays, 2 yeas, 2 nays, nothing. There it is. Motion does not carry. We're done.
Somebody wants to make a motion to recommend that the ED zone, make a motion to recommend that the zoning amendment be approved.
You're gonna get the same.
You get the same result. I'm not.
I'll make the motion. Second.
All right. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Okay, and 2 nays. There we go.
Thank you very much for your. attendance
All right.
this evening.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, have a good night.
Take care, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Hey, thank you.
All right. I'm gonna take 1 second here. I'm gonna hit the men's room, and then we're gonna come with.
Let's do it.
Just give me 1 second. Whatever you want.
Let's do it. Just again, make sure everyone can see what you're gonna put on the tripod.
Yeah, those motions failed, so there's no recommendation.
It's gonna be what it was.
Well, it wasn't mine, but we noticed a couple things that we thought.
Yeah.
If we got it right.
I don't think now, we need to do this for the. I have yet to be able to. You look down the area and have, do you want that's what it is instead of I.
Since you say.
That's what the person says. Why? Because they're gonna want to fight about it. And guess what? All the rich people are going to like 5-word.
I don't know that it changed. I think there was confusion and so
We were not clear in our application. Basically, there's two options. One is a mixed use and one is an incentivized development. It's different. They have different regulations. Mixed use buildings.
I think that's really one.
One is, they're mixed use,
but
They're both mixed use, some of the other regs are different, smaller lot, and things like that. Are
And
24 comments worth of report. Like, here, we're clear on it. You get a, let's allocate what I should have.
That's right. Yeah, that's what else could be.
And we have John.
I don't know.
That first letter you did. After comment 24, those other comments still apply.
All right.
Do you know what's behind them? I don't know.
Also Route 22.
Oh, 22.
I don't know whether it has a problem.
And their idea.
Discussion, talked about a couple.
Right
up the highway.
Letters of that one.
All right.
It's good that he gets past.
All right, let's call it back to order.
Yeah.
All right, Westfield Commons, Nate Euler, you're here? Hello. This is a sketch plan, so what do we have to actually do with it, John?
We just have to listen.
All right.
And perhaps offer some guidance if we have any.
Okay.
Dr. Khan is here, Wayne Wagner is here, representing property owners, developers. Thank you, we were here before for a multimodal grant to apply through the township for money to realign the Franklin Hill Road. As we discussed, currently it comes out of a sharp angle here. The proposal is to bring it in opposite the school entrance at that existing light. That's been planned for many years. And there's actually a track right here, which is owned by the sewer authority to be conveyed back to the township to accomplish that part of it, but there's also property needed from the developer to accomplish that goal. So that application is in. Thank you. Got support from the planning commission, township, and we're waiting to see the results of that. So this is the existing features plan. The pump station for the sewer authority is down here at the intersection. They own that parcel. There's a parcel here. There is a wetland in there, a small wetland in here. There will be a small encroachment to realign the road that's required. There are buffers around those wetlands. There are some steep slopes we're pretty well avoiding up on the top here. And then you've seen the site, it kind of is rolling up and down, and it's got drains in the back here. There was a residential zoning district in the back, and then there's 447 and the school, 447.
Is that residential zoning district? Is that ours here in Smithfield? Or is that part of the borough, Nate? Do you know?
Here's the borough line right here.
Yeah.
This is Smithfield, that side is the borough. But this is-
That's okay. That's the borough. Okay.
So this is a quick sketch of what is being proposed. Again, the realignment of Franklin Hill Road, to bring Franklin Hill Road at the intersection, a driveway coming in here, two buildings, 4 stories high. It is a mixed use building, is an incentivized development option under the ED district. Those are the rules we're following. It requires that we have equal commercial on the first. There's two out. You can have commercial development on the first floor. We're proposing to put an equal amount of the first floor in this building on the second floor. So this building would be all residential. This building would have 2 commercial floors to meet the
intensity of commercial development required. That is an option in the ordinance. The option in the ordinance talks about where a building doesn't have frontage, you can do that. This particular lot, because of the shape of it, it's not deep, everything has commercial frontage. So there are a few clarifications we're going to talk to the supervisors about, particular to this lot, and maybe potential ordinance tweaks. One is that if you do put all the commercial in one building, the ordinance says all first floors should be 15 feet. But if you take the option to put all the commercial in one building, it doesn't really make sense to have a 15-foot residential floor on the first floor. So,
And put commercial in both buildings.
well, that,
What's so hard about that?
in this case, it doesn't work for the developer.
Well, that's not our problem with the township, though, is it?
Well, the goal is to encourage commercial development and.
Our goal is to have people who come in and do developments that conform to our ordinances that we've gone over for years upon years, not keep asking us for ordinance tweaks and revisions.
Well, those are
That's
things
all.
we can, that's why we're here with the sketch plan and here to discuss,
Can't waive the ordinance.
items such as that.
No.
This is.
No, oh, it's the incentivized, yeah, sorry. my mistake.
It's 2 buildings, each 4 stories high, is that what you said? Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. So we had a number of comments, and we've kind of gone through response. There were a couple that John just had some comments back on our responses that we could go through quickly. One is, at this point, this building was slightly smaller, so there wasn't as much commercial equally. We'll make that adjustment so that there is. 2 was about the wetlands. We did a wetland margin calculation, and because this is a separate tract, it is actually owned by the township, we didn't include the margin in there, and we didn't include the impacts there. So we kind of left that out of the equation. I could kind of argue it both ways, but the reality of it is we looked at it, we include the margin that is in there, the impact of that road, the margin impact goes up, but it's still under the threshold. So I don't think we need that. I think we can agree to take your interpretation, because I think we'll meet that requirement. So that was pretty straightforward. Let's see.
Yeah, John, is there anything else you wanted to highlight in the letter? Or?
No, not really.
Okay.
They have some zoning work that they've got to hash out one way or the other, which is either they're proposing to tweak the ordinance, or maybe they can tweak their plan. It's up to them how they want to do that.
The final comment was about open space. This part of the property is proposed to be dedicated to the township. It falls between the sewer authority pump station and the right of way for the road. So this little corner here was going to be provided. John's comment is that doesn't meet the intent of common open space, recreation open space. I guess the only question I had is we looked in the fee schedule. We did a calculation. We think we need about a half an acre. This would exceed that on the surface, but when you do all the calculations, you understand. I didn't know if there was a fee in lieu of that's been established in terms of the dollar figure, just so we know what the options are. I don't see it in the regular fee schedule.
No, not that I know of. It's not something we see much, so.
That's something that you've done before and established.
Think of what we did with Gateway.
I don't remember, John. That was so long ago now.
I think they met the open space requirement, didn't they?
They may have, I can't
I
remember.
believe they did.
Okay, yeah, I pulled up the fee schedule. I didn't see it in that fee schedule, but maybe.
We did
That's
something because they were
we have to
moving
follow.
things,
I think they.
because they were moving things closer to the road and putting parking behind or something from, my memory is too hazy at that point, at this point.
Okay. I seem to remember 30 acres, but okay. Different, we're talking about something else.
We're trying to remember if we applied the fee to Gateway.
That's something, if we can get that information, we can weigh our options about how to approach that issue. I guess one of the things we are looking at is the parking is in front here, the parking is not typically in the front, but because we have these residential zoning boundaries in the back, we feel it's better to put the parking in the front and keep that activity away from the residential use of that. That would be some of the clarifications, either unique to this site or just, consideration that when you have a residential use to the back, maybe that parking is better suited in the front.
And then you'll be required to do the landscaping between the parking and the road.
Correct. We have a landscape in there. There's already an existing trail in there that will be maintained. So that's the quick overview. We appreciate comments from John that help us all get on the same page. We still have some things to work out. As noted, we have some ordinance tweaks that either work out with the township or work out on our plan.
No action
But,
necessary, right?
particularly important is that parking in the front. That is something.
Let me make a comment on tweaks, because this is something that's important to us. It's the first time we're going through using the incentivized mixed use. So obviously, there are going to be questions on that because we've never done it before. And it's very impressive.
What, I'm sorry, I'm how I missed it. What is the commercial going to be?
Commercial is a combination of retail, medical office, and extended stay hotel rooms in this. So the retail, medical office all on the first floor, extended stay hotel on the second. Right. All the commercial proposed in this.
What's in the other building? Residential.
Residential, 1 and 2 bedroom apartment.
How many units do you have an idea?
Yes, 83 in this one. 42 in the upper levels of that one.
I mean, I think this is a comment, and you heard it here. I mean, the whole concept of this was this idea of commercial ground floor, of retail, coffee shop. That was sort of the idea of this. So it's not really in keeping with what the ordinance is about, having it in 2 different buildings.
Right.
I think that's the challenge you'll face with.
Well, wait a minute, the ordinance says that if you do not have a building that has frontage, you can put commercial in that building into another one that has frontage.
Right.
But we have frontage.
Well, okay, but I'm saying, there are questions that are always gonna come up with this, but especially now, 'cause we haven't been through this before.
Right.
About, okay, we've got a site that doesn't fit with what we assumed it would be. How do we work it? What do we do? How do we
What's
do it?
considered, well, the other question is what's considered frontage here, because the entrance is not on the main road.
Right.
I mean, just like devil's
We're
advocate.
kind of looking at frontage being.
Frontage would be
being
there.
the main road out there. So try to get into some Harrison's definition.
This is another thing that you're thinking of. I mean, they haven't put it on this and we haven't encouraged it, but as I look at, let's say, the Price Chopper development or Wawa, what they've done is put kind of a what do you call it, a pork chop entrance off the main road, either in and out or just in, because I think the reason for that was probably for commercial reasons of saying, look, some people are not gonna wanna go through the light, go around the corner and go in. We have to have some other way that at least we have egress to the property. I think, and the same thing could possibly be a factor here coming off of 209, I'm sorry, 447.
447.
So that if you have a commercial area, you can get to it easily.
Is that many
Well,
parking?
go ahead.
Is that, all that parking, is that because it's required by our ordinance?
Yes, we will actually ask for because these are 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, your ordinance requires 2 point something.
Yeah,
two
something like
parking spaces. Get some credit for sharing them because you have commercial uses and residential uses that won't peak at the same time. But we would ask to go down to 1.5 parking spaces for those 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. ITE parking manual says it's adequate, and that seems to be the experience of people who construct and rent those sites. So that is one thing we would be looking for to get some relief from the parking requirements. But I think we have plenty here, 79 spaces, I think. That is another one.
The commission should also be aware under the amendment that was passed by the board, the amendment to the ED zone. It says that if there's a multi-building development, in fact, let me get the right language so I don't. screw it up. All right, if there is a multi-building development project, the commercial by right uses under this ordinance may be concentrated in one building or on more than one floor, as long as the minimum square footage area is met as calculated for each proposed use. So the ordinance permits one building to be all residential as long as the other commercial one, meets these requirements, whatever they are. But generally, there should be no residential uses on any commercial frontage. That's the general rule, except as I just.
We appreciate any comments you have. We'll take these comments, refine our plan, and continue to work with the township to proceed.
Just one quick question.
Yeah.
This, the south side, is that residential?
The south,
Like, south of the road?
Yes.
down here, these are residential.
Both sides.
So yeah, this is Franklin Hill.
And that's also not our township, is that correct?
This is the borough line right
That's
here.
the borough of East Stroudsburg. Yeah, there's a couple of,
This is Stone.
R1. And I think
yeah, it is.
one of the reasons for putting the buildings in the back is really to provide a more of a buffer. R1, we thought, when they came in to talk to us, or something on your point, the neighbors do not want the lights of the parking lot right near them. This would be a buffer between them.
The recollection is about where you have it printed there in the East Stroudsburg part. I think the guy's got a nice, that's the one that's a nice set of beehives. If I remember right. Cause I drive by it every day. Here's it coming down that one. Are you the one with the beehives?
The other side.
Yeah, on the other side. Okay. All right, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you had something you want to say? I'm sorry. Thanks for opening up your mouth. Okay, yeah. All right, why don't you stand up? Let us know who you are, please.
I live on Stonegate Drive. That lot is in my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand that this project is part of the, what it is, when I moved there, I knew there was a parcel there and something was going to be built. But the ED ordinance, I have a couple of notes here, that this district is intended to encourage a diverse number of compatible non-residential uses along high-volume corridors. The district promotes flexible design options to encourage well-designed non-residential land uses in conformance with the goals of Smithfield Township. And then it says, underneath it, it says, assure the suitable design to protect the character and property values of the adjacent and nearby neighborhoods, which is us. Also, there's a formula for the number of dwellings that are allowed on the property. And that's under also 305 mixed use. Under dimensional and supplementary requirements and dwellings. It says mixed use development shall be 5 units per acre. And that's of usable land. Now you take away, I don't know, an acre or two here and there, for unusable land. This is part of the clarification that we need to make. There's a mixed use development option and there's an incentivized. Two different things. So we have a mixed use building or we're doing commercial and residential, but it's under the requirements to be incentivized. I'm not familiar with the incentivized.
One of the problems is that the code has not been updated. It will be updated by the end of this year. But even though these things are passed, the code is only updated what you read once a year. And as John can say, it's very confusing. He made 14 notes on this that were irrelevant because he was dealing with the wrong part of the code. There's actually a 305 and there's now a 308, which is what the incentivized development is.
very confusing because you can't read it.
Well,
I don't have access. Well, our engineer had no access.
And we reference it as a mixed use development. We added that a little bit.
So
because we do
residential uses are allowed on mixed use development. That is
incentivize
over 100 units.
incentivized development.
If you go to this, it is there. If you go to the search Smithfield Township, Pennsylvania ordinance.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
it's just 308. You look at 308.
308, they're really different.
Mixed use.
305.
It's different than 305.
Yeah, it addresses mixed
You
use.
have to meet different criteria.
Well, I think we want 100 and some odd apartments. But, I mean, that is allowed, I don't know. I mean, that's not the intent of an ED zone, but it's non-residential 100 times. I mean, this isn't in 305, this is under, definition of ED. The other one is, I still use the mixed use development. And, the setbacks and the buffer. Is that in the incentivized? The setback is stipulated, and so I see there's a buffer on that.
There's a setback along the back, and then, yes, we pulled the buildings further
How
back.
far away are the buildings from the property line?
I would say, this is the 40-foot setback, so it's more than twice that, so 80
The
to.
setback, as I understand it, yeah. It is 80 feet, but the buffer is almost 50. You have 40 there?
This is 40 that's required, and I would say the buildings are probably set
And
back.
it's changed, that changed in the incentivized, this is for resident, adjacent to residential, is different criteria.
It is. So we probably have 90 feet, but the minimum
They
is
have 80 feet setback and a 50-foot buffer, and the buffer has to be, landscape with the berm and the trees. Fencing. Adjacent to an R1 zone. That's what my understanding is of it.
I believe it's
I know that,
a little different.
John's a lot more familiar with it, but that's what.
And just please remember, this is a sketch plan. This is to
Right, and he's,
iron out the big picture. Not to say that your comments aren't valid and aren't things that we don't have to look for, but we haven't looked for them at that depth yet.
well, the last one, you.
Well, we're not, no, we
Couple
didn't.
years ago.
Well, we're not here about something from a couple of years ago. This is new.
And
And we'll get a complete application and.
Yeah, it'll be a complete thing.
Initial discussion.
It'll be a lot like the old one, though.
Of course it will.
And construction.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
Okay. Where'd my thing go? My neck, there it is.
No,
Solar ordinance.
What is that?
Rob and Jake, solar ordinance thing, what is that?
Solar ordinance?
We have the municipal curative amendment that was filed, Mr. Chair. Basically said that there are two areas of the zoning ordinance that is defective or defective. Warehouse definitions and warehouse uses and solar definitions and uses. So, under the municipal curative amendment provisions, the curative amendment has to be filed by the township and approved, I think by like March 23 of next year or something, along with the warehouse. It's a 180-day window from whenever it was the end of September. So this is the first go around to attempt to cure the township's alleged deficiency in solar energy, because I believe there are, unlike the warehousing where there is a true line definition of zoning ordinance,
I don't believe there's any definition for the solar, so.
We have that from you?
This did not come from me. This came from our very capable township manager, and I believe she said it follows one of the, local counties, like maybe Montour County.
What's it based on?
This is based on the Montour County model ordinance.
Do they have any solar farm there yet?
They said that they, oh my gosh, probably the gentleman, I don't know if they've had any installed at this time. I did speak to them 3 days ago, and they haven't had to create a decommissioning estimate at this time. It's my understanding that they haven't had to do that, because they haven't had anyone come in. So in the process of developing this, while it is based on the Montour County zoning ordinance, I also looked at the Upper Paxton zoning ordinance from Dawson County, Stroud Township, Cumberland County, the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission guidance, and spoke to our local Eric Koopman, who then shifted me over to the Chester County. So I don't know if you guys have had any opportunity to review this. Before we get into the general details, though, Ron had mentioned that we have to adopt it by a certain date. Just so the planning commission and all of the public is aware of the dates that we have to hit, to make sure we get this in front of you and the public as often as we can, are the following. So here now, we're under review, and any revisions that you give me will then go before the board on December 28th. At that time, the board will review it at their meeting, comment on any changes, and send it back to you. From there, the PC is scheduled to review again at your January 12th meeting, and get basically any final comments ready. Because in order to maintain the section 609.2 deadlines that we have to hit, the BOS on February 8th must vote to send it to the Monroe County Planning Commission and you guys as a final ordinance ready to be adopted.
That's both the warehouse and.
That is both warehouses and solar.
By the way, 28.
Right, that is correct.
pages.
16 pages? Jesus Christ.
I have reviewed this, Mr. Chair, and it's very comprehensive and very thorough. It may well be that
Hope so.
if you have not yet had an opportunity to
No.
review it, then obviously it would be difficult to make any recommendation, but my only question is, there is one clause where it says that if there is no generation of energy for 12 continuous months, the use is considered abandoned. It's sort of like a, stop of a non-conforming use, whatever. I'm just not crazy about the 12 continuous months, because I could see someone be cute and say,
Absolutely.
okay,
Yeah.
we'll run our place for 2 days this weekend, and now we're good till next year, and then we'll run it again for two days. So we may have to change that language, but other than that, it's
just
very
like-
comprehensive.
Speaking of curative, just at this near term,
I'm sorry, I didn't.
How- well, I'm just making a pun. Just to cure us tonight, to be curative of us tonight. How about we just say by January 12th?
Oh, absolutely, that works.
We have then read it. And we can come in and we can have a meeting where we can speak coherently.
That works, I do have.
What's the matter, Michael?
Ready to go?
No. I had a couple questions already.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I do have questions that I want to bring to the
Mhm.
planning commission as well for answers that I haven't found yet.
Yeah.
That hopefully on January 12th, we can all come up with something together.
Unless I missed it, we haven't identified which zone this would be.
Yeah,
allowed.
right.
That's
Right.
correct. One of.
That's sort of the
pending-
biggest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the pending questions is where are we going to allow this? We can do it by a traditional zoning map and say this is only allowed in the ED zone or only allowed in industrial. One of the things that Mr. Koopman suggested that I forwarded to you guys to see was a zoning overlay in which he took and mapped all of the transmission lines, picked that out to 0.25 miles on either side of the line, because that's about as far as they can be to be active or some weird energy thing that I don't understand. And then identify properties within that overlay zone that would work for solar. So we've got the option here to do traditional zoning, if it's allowed in certain zones, or create an overlay district to allow it in certain areas along the line.
where we want it to be. So we, I mean,
Where
That's
we want
weird.
it to
I've
be
heard-
really spot zoning.
yeah, exactly.
But what we could do is say, here's the overlay district, and your property needs to meet certain requirements. For example, one of the, I don't remember who did it, but someone said that this has to have a 30-acre minimum. So then once you impose that overlay district, any property that is within that overlay that has that 30-acre minimum would allow solar on that property as a principal solar structure, not auxiliary, that was a different thing.
You can also still place those limitations within the zone too, right? Must be at least.
One of the comments said that industry is rapidly changing and solar can be installed on smaller and smaller sites.
And that's partially addressed, once you have some time to go through this, accessory solar energy systems, which are the solar panels that you'll see on houses.
They're already on there. So what are they doing now?
So right now, it's just a building permit. But if you think about it, we could maybe have something like a larger area, like, not suggesting anything, but maybe Vigon or a school pursue accessory solar as a way to power just that industry. Because they would use a lot of power on that site, not necessarily accessory, because they're only powering that site and not proposing to shift any of that electricity off-site to power other things. It would still fall under an ASES structure. So this would impose things on that. There are a few different things, different site disturbances that they'll allow. But once you have an opportunity to read this, section 1 addresses accessory solar energy systems and all of the
Who's
requirements
they?
related to it.
Who's the they that's allowing this? You said that they would allow.
That township in general, through the ordinance, it would
Okay,
be,
through the
or
ordinance.
if anybody wanted to do accessory
Now,
solar.
so I don't know what my sister's situation is, but she in Massachusetts, she installed solar panels. And it feeds back through her, but you know the way it works, it feeds back through your
On her
system,
building.
basically through your meter.
Yeah, that's on her building. This is about,
It's on her building, yeah.
this is
Yeah.
largely about farms.
So because it's on her building, that would be considered an accessory solar energy system.
Okay, so it's a
Instead of a
permit.
principal
I
solar
got
energy
it.
system, which would be designed to generate solar energy
Ah.
in one big old spot and feed it into power homes.
Right.
122 by Moravian.
Like a solar farm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The commission should also be aware, fortunately or unfortunately, as the case may be, that you will be getting a warehouse ordinance also to review for your
Hmm.
January 12th. meeting,
Okay.
Because both of those ordinances need to be adopted by that March date.
Okay.
And of course, that's on my plate to do, so hopefully I will get it to you as soon as I can, but right now, I'm not there yet.
Okay.
I would advise you to stop calling it a warehouse. It's not what we're talking about here. It's a logistical distribution center. A warehouse, by our definition, a place where you store stuff. This is not anything to do with it.
Well, and I think we're calling it warehouse just for ease of saying, because in the new.
I wouldn't.
Fair, but in the new draft ordinance, you guys will find definitions for warehouses, distribution centers, truck terminals, and I think there's one more. High volume cube something or other.
IQ density warehouse.
Thank you. That we'll just need to address to make sure people can't swing around our requirements.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. Good job.
Well, the roof of a 1,000,000 square foot warehouse sounds like a good place for a solar farm.
I've looked
Just
into that
kidding.
with other possible warehouses. It's difficult, it's because of the bearing on the roof.
I just, after receiving this, actually happened to have a conversation with a guy who's puts these up across the country, these massive farms. And I guess the challenges are, when you put them on roofs, which I think everyone agrees would be better, that there's weight issues. If you're in a snow area, you have snow issues. But then the bigger one is there's just massive increased risk for leaks
Yes, you have poke holes in it.
because you're putting holes in your building.
And they lose, look, it's a chemical process. It's photovoltaic.
Yeah,
energy is- And they degrade usually at a fairly steady rate of 2% a year.
As opposed to just having. field.
At 2% a year. So then you're gonna lose, you're gonna lose your one, and at some point, you're gonna have these things sitting in a farm field or whatever, and you're either gonna have to replace them, for which there's virtually no way to recycle them, or you're going to just leave them there and abandon the site. That's what's gonna happen.
And that's why it's really important that we have the decommissioning aspect of this, which is written into.
But they'll be bankrupt already.
But they'll have to post a performance bond, so we have the money ahead of time.
Well, we have in today's dollars. I mean,
That's right.
we're chunking along at 8.5% inflation, and today's dollars are rapidly turning into today's dimes. So,
Fair, part of the way that this ordinance is written is to address that in stages. So once you hit the point where you need to go decommission a solar farm, they are required immediately at the offset to post 110% performance bond in the event that they try and abandon the site. And then it can be reassessed every 5 years. So it's not a perfect system, but it's something that you need to consider if you think that needs to be stronger to protect the township. And it's definitely do that.
That's no kind of investment.
all right. So we're gonna have,
We need distribution centers.
With tonight, a million square feet is, if you took Walmart down in Charlotte,
Well, we know,
it's about 14 of those.
Yeah. connected all together.
One building, but that's how big. it is.
Well, let's just also think about Bygone.
That's 135,000 square feet for each building.
Right. Two buildings, so it's 260,000 square feet. And so picture 4 of those. Well, there isn't even enough acreage down there to do 4 of those.
So the only place that isn't up there is what we talked about. Because the only other possibility is the property behind Dairy Queen. But there's a deed restriction where.
Mhm.
houses can't go.
So what's a million square feet, 25 acres roughly?
I know it's more than that. They're talking about 50 acres, 40, 50 acres.
I mean, under one roof. 50 acres under one
I
roof?
think that's what they said.
Nah,
Trucks inside
no,
there.
that's 25.
it's 45,000 square feet roughly per acre.
26, 7 acres.
A million square feet times 45 feet high is 45 million cubic feet.
Cubic feet. he
There you are. No, I'm talking about cubic. I'm talking volume.
23 acres.
It's just looked it up.
No, you can just divide it by 45,000 roughly, and there you go. 44,000, whatever.
I think it's about 50. I think it's about 50.
Yeah, so you could put a couple of football fields in there and a soccer field.
Well, we all need our Christmas presents.
And whatever happened to the old soccer thing we wanted to do there? Yeah. All right.
It's, like
Goodbye.
many of those things, it's just vanished.
Well, gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind, there are a few things that I'd like to draw your attention to, just to have
Please.
time to mull over them. One of the things, right now, the way the ordinance is written, we don't allow for something called solar canopy. What that is if somebody were to take a parking lot, let's say the Walmart parking lot, and place solar above the parking spaces.
Right.
So it's
They do
solar
that at
panels.
Northampton Community.
Mhm.
Yes, so
Yeah,
the solar
so-
panels over like that, a lot of ordinances that I've found like to allow those, which requires a small exception in the height requirement, which is currently 15. Something I haven't come up with an answer yet is tree removal and deforestation. Unfortunately, we've all seen what's happening north of us in Pocono Township, so I'm pursuing ways to prevent clear cutting for this sort of thing. I forwarded all of you a message from Tim Hutchinson, which has suggestions from Chester County, and tree replacement options. Yes, John?
With the alternate engineer in Dingman Township in Heights County, and they've got an ordinance. I can probably get you a copy, where they only. Don't quote me on this, but regardless of the size of the parcel, I think you only remove 15% of the trees to put in a solar array. I mean, what happened in Pocono Township, they took down 100%.
Right.
And so this
You
limits.
can't do solar with shade. Doesn't
Right,
work.
This limits it by percentage.
Yeah.
That's true.
Get me that ordinance, that would be wonderful.
No work with shade, everything else.
Another thing, I believe it was the Delaware Valley Planning Commission suggested a 1-for-1 tree removal as far as any trees that were being removed that were more than 8 inches in diameter. The only thing we need to be worried about that, and you'll read this in Ann Hutchinson's email, is that we need to be careful to balance the conservation, and we can't necessarily limit that to only solar development, because you can get around it. And there are also concerns for if you call it timber harvesting, then that doesn't apply. So we need to be careful about conservation. One other thing to be aware of, property, I just as you're thinking about this, property owners do not have the right to prevent shade from being passed on their property by other properties. So people can pursue easements separately, but that's definitely not something that we should put in our ordinance in any fashion. Just as you're doing your research. And then the other thing I wanted to bring your attention to was setbacks for this. The way this is designed currently, you can while I get there. And depending on where it is, there will be a buffer and setback set by our development standards. For example, in the economic district right now, we've got front yards of 50 or 65 feet, depending on what it is. Front yards are 50 to 65, side yards are 20 feet, rear yards are 30 feet, and there are provisions to increase that if it's against a residential area. The way this is written right now, there will be the setback, and then they have to have a fence, and then a 20-foot cartway before they can continue and start the solar after that. So if you're looking at a side yard setback of 20 feet, pretending that they're up against additional commercial, so there's nothing else on the side. It's a 20-foot buffer and then a 20-foot access way after the fence. So we've got a working setback of 40 feet. So just as you go through that, consider how much space we need, because all of these solar ordinances address a buffer. If we're going to force people to put in a buffer with trees, it's going to be, they're going to want to put that buffer in and ensure that they're not casting shade on their own panel. So just something to consider as you're going around, but those were the only few points that I wanted to bring up to you guys at this time.
Really, just
Yes.
bear with me for a moment here. Was not able to keep up. What about this easements? You said for shade or for solar use? What was that question again?
So property owners, let's say I wanted to put solar on my property. I am not allowed by law to go to my adjacent property owner and say, sir or ma'am, your tree is casting shade on my property, you need to cut it down.
Okay.
So the way that solar farms prevent property owners from further inhibiting solar farm development is by entering into a private easement with adjacent property owners that has a shade clause in it, saying, for example, that a tree may not be over 20 feet at any given time if it's within 20 feet of the property.
Okay.
It basically prevents the shade from being cast. But the important part here is that is not something
Shade
the
easement.
township should be involved in. That is private landowner to private owner.
Sure.
It's a light easement, actually, yes.
Oh, it-
Same thing, that's just, but that's, yeah. All right, is there a push for these somewhere?
there isn't at this time,
Right,
but
there's a reason for that, but go ahead.
but I didn't want to take the opportunity to have the municipality get hit with a curative amendment and have to allow this in the middle of the residential district. So this is the township taking preemptive steps to make sure that when solar hits, it's where we want it and it's properly regulated. So, it doesn't affect our residents in a negative way. The warehouse distribution center is a little bit different because we have one at least verbally proposed that you heard earlier, but we don't have any plans in front of the township at this time for either of those.
Because there's no reason to put one up there, top of the plateau. Where they're doing the one now, up there with the solar one. There's no reason to put it up there. The Pocono Plateau, quite literally has the least amount of sunlight days in the entire East Coast. So there's got to be another reason for it. And it's really because it's got to be some sort of perverted incentivized tax reason to do it. There's no other reason to do solar in Tobyhanna. There's not even a good reason to buy a good pair of sunglasses if you live in Tobyhanna. Because it's cloudy up there for so many days. Well, that's the truth. I lived there a long time. That's why we go up there to cross country ski. They get twice as much snow as we get down here. That's what it is. That's true.
Degrees colder all the time.
It's always 10 degrees colder. We average about 40 inches of snow here. They average a little over 80 up there at the Tobyhanna State Park. I'm telling you how it is. That's how it works. So there's no reason for it. That's why I'm wondering, is there pressure? The answer is no, because there's no reason to gobble up what would otherwise be land that is in scarcity at a development interest rate and bond rate that is now skyrocketed to do anything of the sort like this.
You know that. And I know that too now that you've told me, but I don't want to take that chance.
No, I understand. The economic realities is if solar was so great, you'd be building them like they would in Tucson, because there they have, 340 days of sun a year. That's all. So anyway, so you're going to give us the warehouse one also, so we can do both of them in January.
Yeah, the solar is definitely coming from me. It looks like Ron and I are gonna kind of sort of tag team, warehouse and distribution center. But either way, we'll have, both the solar ordinance in front of you now, as well as some warehouse things to consider on January.
Like
12th.
by next week would be great, so we have like almost a month to read it.
Yeah.
So the things that you gave us tonight were the two things with the emails on the top. That is part of what this is,
Yeah,
okay.
that's it.
16-page.
The 16 page and the other, so not missing anything else.
And talking about his ideas.
That's all. I just want to make sure I have it in the right spot, because obviously we're going to have some reading, so.
For the warehouse, does it have to be a separate ordinance, or can it just be a modification of definitions and addition of use, allowable uses in certain districts?
Correct, but it all be functionally as one actual document. We just have two
That's why
separate.
I hate the ordinances, impossible to read.
Yes, it is. It's not, it's,
For that reason.
Not that bad.
eh, You get bogged down.
So feasibly about by the middle to end of January, all of our ordinances will be codified up to the most recent ordinance.
Wow.
And then we're also looking at pursuing whether or not it would be in the township's best interest to codify as we go, or if we should plan to codify every 6 months or 12 months, based on how many ordinances were passed in the law of fiscal responsibility.
as you go.
It
I
does make
agree
it
with that.
easier that way.
Well, it makes it easier for people that,
So without Mr.
I put on my practitioner's hat. We would need to know that. That's, that's important.
Motion to table. Are you done?
That is everything I have for you. If
Motion
you
to adjourn,
gentlemen
really.
have any, questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. This
Oh,
is
I
a
see what you mean.
relatively
Table this one
recent,
till January. Yes.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
January.
All right. Michael makes the,
I'm just curious, supervisors being one way or the other as it relates to the two options of identifying a district or doing an overlay?
The solar,
Yeah,
They received the information at the same time you did.
Oh.
So we haven't even sorry, the board has not even discussed any of this in any official capacity yet. That'll be scheduled for the 28th.
okay.
all right. So Michael's made a motion to table.
21st. My apologies.
Second.
21st meeting.
All right. So we'll table to the January meeting, seconded by Doug.
Aye.
All in favor, everybody's out, and on motion to
Move to adjourn.
adjourn. So moved. Everybody's in agreement. Thank you.
Just for reference, who motioned?
Pick one.
All right, I got it.
Scott and I, doesn't matter.
Right. Pick one.
Well, there we go. That's that.
We'll call Commissioner Moses, the great adjourn.